City Council meeting of September 27th to order. I'm first going to invite Captain Williams to lead us in the pledge.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tammy, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Avila,
Here?
Councilmember Beaver, Councilmember Thorpe,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Here.
Mayor Bogue.
Here. All right, so I guess I do have some public speakers. That takes us to public comment. I have 3 public speakers. Just so you know, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. So when the red button or the red light goes on, wrap up your last sentence, and then we'll go on to the next one. So I'm going to start with it's Kathy Rosenfeld. Kathy, where are you from?
I live in Yucaipa, but I am representing the Friends of the Yucaipa Library. And they're here with me tonight. They want to stand and wave. And I'll make this short. We want to get on your agenda so you know us. Yucaipa is a vibrant, growing community. A quick look through the Community Services Guide can attest to the activities provided for residents in every age group. A new subdivision surround a lake is rapidly being completed. To further enhance Yucaipa, which is advertised as the jewel of the Inland Empire, it is time to consider a new library. And that's what we're here for. It's time. I have with me that I'm not sure who we give these to, but you can become a friend of the library for as low as $8 for one, $10 for the family. I can tell you our numbers for the summer reading program, and this is just from our Yucaipa branch. If you haven't been there, walk over. 483 children signed up, 78 teens, 179 adults. So 740 people signed up for the summer reading program, and that was a 236% increase over 2020. I could bore you to death with numbers, but go visit our branch manager, Elizabeth, and she'll thing. It is used. The library is being used. The computers are being used. Books are being checked out. People are going in there to learn to read. Families are going in there to use computers. It's time that we have more room and an updated building. I, for one, appreciate when things are being done to upgrade the bathrooms and other rooms, but it's time to just put the Band-Aid on it and let's build something new that has more meeting space, computers, activities. We need it. We are Yucaipa. We need to be representative. We're a small but fierce group. Our budget for the library as the Friends is $16,800 a year. This year, even with the pandemic, we have been spending money to buy books, to give them items they need. Luckily this year, the summer programs that usually we fund have been done by the county, but that's going to go back to the branch level, and that's what we raise money for. We have a used bookstore right in the library. Again, walk over. You'll be shocked at good bestsellers you can get for 50 cents up to $2. We need the library. We need to keep education going. Not everybody, and I'm not picking anybody here. I do have an e-reader, but there's nothing that beats a good book that you hold in your hand. So anybody else? Did I leave anything out, my friends? Okay. Keep us in mind. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Richard Frost. Where are you from, Richard?
12731 3rd Street.
You speak into the mic.
Yeah, 12731 3rd Street. Okay. Yeah, about a month ago, somebody commented that he thought the city wasn't keeping up things like vacant lots and things like that. And he said it looked kind of, overgrown. It might have been partly because of the pandemic, disorganization, that kind of thing. So I walk around a lot, so I see a lot of different areas. And he probably had a point, and it was just kind of, not really bad, but just kind of overgrown and, you know, kind of trash around and stuff like that, so it's kind of.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. That's usually county weed abatement. Is that correct, Ray?
There are times when code enforcement also has a role in that, but yes, it starts typically with county weed abatement.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Clyde Kelly. Where are you from, Clyde?
I'm from Yucaipa, live at Second and E. I've been here 23 years. I'm here representing the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 7347. Our post is in really bad shape. We've contacted District National for help with our post fundings, and we have not received any answer from any of them. Right now, we're able to do it, but we want to make improvements to the property and to the building, as far as painting, landscaping, and et cetera. We have 147 members, and we've sent out flyers to all members asking for donations to be made to the post on a yearly basis. Our membership is $35 a year, but our post only gets $3 out of that $35 per year. So we're in dire straits with this pandemic, and we need to make some improvements because our business has been cut almost from a half to 3/4 down. We barely have $600 in the bank at any one time. So I'm here to ask for council members and guests, consider us for a grant or loan, anything that we may accomplish to help improve the appearance of our post. So on behalf of Gary Checker, our commander, Rick Kibble, our adjutant, I thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Clyde. Now, Clyde, one quick question. Yes. Are you the point of contact? Are you the one that fills out the grant applications?
I haven't filled out a grant application. I'm the service officer for the post, and I do all the public reviewing and help the members get their disabilities.
Right, we'll make sure that you get one of the applications for our grant cycle.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, I think that's it for public comment. That's going to take us to consent agenda, and those are items 1 through 4. Are there any items that one wishes to remove?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just for the record, City Council received amendments and attachments to several items that were in the consent, including what copies in the back of the room. Those amendments were made to items number 3, number 5, and attachments added to number 6 and number 8. So some of those are in consent.
Okay. Is everyone okay with the changes made?
Would it be appropriate to ask city manager to give a synopsis of all of the amendments to the items on the consent?
Well, there's only one on consent, right? Number 3?
Right, it's only one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make a quick synopsis of the changes to item number 3. Item number 3 is a cooperative funding agreement with the city of Redlands regarding paving on the west side of 16th Street, east side of 18th Street, where our streets are split down the middle between the two cities. And what the amendment includes is the contingency amount that was referenced in the agreement but not in the allocation of funding, and some other more minor changes, with the request for council to authorize the city manager and the city attorney to work together on any non-substantive changes to the agreement prior to execution.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda, items 1 through 4 with number 3 modification.
I'll second. All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept all items on the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to mayor and council member business reports. So before we go ahead, you guys have anything you'd like to talk about? Bob, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, no.
David, do you have something?
I do. It won't take more than 25, 30 minutes. No, this is, last weekend, city manager Ray Casey and I attended the California League of Cities Annual Conference that was held in Sacramento last Thursday and Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I was sent there on behalf of the city council to represent our vote on a couple of issues. And I want to talk about those because it didn't come out the way that we thought it was. The first one was the resolution that the League of Cities requests the legislature to pass legislation that would provide for a fair and equitable distribution of the so-called Bradley Burns 1% local sales tax from in-state online purchases. What that means is that there'd be some money for us, even though we don't have any warehouse or distribution centers, and that's for the benefit of the public. Well, there was a lot of opposition to that from a lot of cities in Southern California, especially here in the Inland Empire, where there are a lot of distributions and fulfillment centers, San Bernardino, Fontana, Rancho Cucamonga, Ontario, and others. And as a result of that, this opposition was strong enough to bring in a substitute motion, which in part would cause the issue to be sent back to the committees. And after much discussion, that's exactly what happened. So I was sent there to vote to approve the resolution, but it was defeated. The other resolution that I was sent to approve was for the legislature to provide adequate regulatory authority necessary finding to assist cities with railroad right-of-way areas to address illegal dumping, graffiti, and homeless encampments, and that was passed. All other things were pretty much as expected. A lot of talking, changing of the guard. As for the conference itself, a little light. They weren't really sure where they're going to have a conference, so some of our speakers have been there before, and a lot of new things, kind of stuff we've heard before in the past. And the exposition itself was a little light because, again, they weren't even sure whether we were going to have a conference this year or not. Overall, it was productive, and I would encourage my fellow members to have that experience in the future. I believe our next conference is going to be in Long Beach, and maybe it would offer more opportunities for some of our council members who are actually working to have an opportunity to go back and forth from home to work and maybe have some experience with this conference. It can be very interesting, especially if the subject matter is new to you. And that concludes my report.
Well, I don't recall ever in the last number of years that anyone or that the group has denied or not or rejected an item. I think that was a first.
It has been done before, but usually we've been on the side that supported taking it back for, if I remember right, my first time there, there was something similar. Okay. But yeah, this is not usual. They're now called Cal Cities. You know, sure, Cal Fire, Cal Trans, Cal everything else. So they're now Cal Cities. They capitulated to this, and it's going to go back, and it may even just die there. Who knows? It is interesting.
All right. John, do you have anything? Nope. All right. All right, so that's going to take us to item number 5, an appointment to the Trails and Open Space Committee. Is this for me?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is an appointment to the Trails and Open Space Committee. The Trails and Open Space Committee has one at-large vacant position. At this month's Trails and Open Space Committee meeting, staff was informed that one of the members will be resigning at the end of this month. One of the at-large members will be resigning at the end of this month due to their relocation outside of the city. And that will be effective September 30th. So once that occurs, it'll result in 2 vacant at-large positions. the city has received 2 citizen service applications from 2 people that are interested in participating and being a member on the committee. Staff's recommendation tonight is that City Council consider the appointment of the 2 at-large members to the Trails and Open Space Committee. Each applicant has been notified of tonight's meeting and have been informed that their presence is desired, usually if council needs further clarification. So at this time, staff's recommendation is that City Council consider the appointment of 2 at-large members to the Trails and Open Space Committee. That concludes my report.
All right, so is Robert or Adam here? Would you like to come up?
So is there, there's one opening now, and then there's going to be another one later, is that it?
There will be another one effective September 30th in a
I
few
got
days.
it.
So total of 2. So we
Yes.
can approve the 2 if we needed to, okay.
Would you like to say something, or?
I just, I'm honored to actually get called over here, and not in my wildest dreams I ever thought I'd be standing in front of City Hall, so.
My apologies, are you Adam or are you Robert?
I'm Adam. I'm
Okay.
one of the owners of Hops and Spokes Brewing Company.
All right,
We do weekly rides, Monday, Wednesday nights, mountain bike rides, so very familiar with all the trails. There's a group of us that have been cleaning up the trails because they're getting overgrown, so I'd like to be a part of it and help out.
awesome. Well, you're in the right city for mountain biking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So is Robert, are you out there? Sure.
You're not Robert.
Today.
Hey, Bob.
You know, first I'd like to say about Adam. Adam and his family are sponsors of our mountain bike new course that we're so proud of in Wildwood Canyon. And he's also on our ad hoc mountain bike committee and contributes very much. He was also at our meeting, so he's attended our meeting and knows what it's all about. Also about Rob Richmond, he was on the committee before. He is on the Crafton Hills Conservancy, and he's a great liaison. He also is on the Take a Hike. He leads the hike quite a bit, and he's also now taking over the Adopt a Trail. So he's pretty a valuable asset to us.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess we have the opportunity to appoint both.
I move we do. Appoint both.
I'll second.
Are we going to appoint one now and then one later, or how are we going to do that? Because I was going to move Adam to be appointed now and then Robert to be appointed whenever. Is that what we're doing, or?
Yeah, staff's recommendation is that City Council appoint both members.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion to accept both.
With the second being effective on September 30th,
Yes.
for the record.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so that takes us to possible action on pending legislation. Ray, do you have anything?
Mr. Mayor, sorry, on that
Sorry.
last item, if we could just get clarification as to which of the appointees is
Oh, it's away.
immediate and which of the appointees would become effective upon the vacancy in September 30th?
Okay. So you made the motion, what?
It doesn't matter to me.
Well, Adam
both-
is here, right?
Yeah, so we can do it, Adam first, and
There we go. Was
That
your-
was easy.
Was that part of your motion?
it is now.
All right,
Second. And I second that.
all right.
All right, thank you.
Does that clarify?
Yes, thank you.
All right, okay. All right, so that takes us to possible action on pending legislation. Ray, do you have anything?
I do not have anything more, and as you mentioned last time, they're out of session now, so hopefully nothing can happen untoward while they're out of session. So.
I know unfortunately the governor has signed a number of bills that were detrimental to our city, but we have to deal with it at this point, so. All right, so that takes us to department reports. It's number 6, and I believe this is Caroline.
Good evening, Mayor Bogue and City Council members. For your consideration this evening is the declaration of city-owned properties as surplus land and one city-owned property as exempt surplus land. There are several properties that the city owns that staff believes is no longer needed for city purposes. In order for the city to eventually sell these properties, when and if the opportunity arises, the city must first declare the properties as surplus and proceed with other requirements surplus pursuant to the Surplus Land Act. The declaration of these properties as surplus land and one as exempt surplus land follows the state requirements. So these are the subject properties as depicted on the screen, and I'll run through each of them very briefly one by one. The first one is a property generally located east of Yucaipa Brewing Company. This is approximately 0.46 acres and would not include the city's parcel on the public driveway located along the eastern portion of the parcel. This property is where the city's incubator center is currently located on 5th and the Boulevard. This would only be for the incubator portion of the property and would not include the county library. Both of those properties sit on the same parcel, but I just wanted to make note of that. This one is a little over 1 acre. The next properties are what we call our 10th Street properties. These are located on Yucaipa Boulevard between 10th and 11th Street. The two parcels, as you can see, are adjacent to each other and together are about 1 acre combined. This is a portion of two parcels, generally located northwest of 13th and the Boulevard, west of the fire station. Currently, it's used as vacant land.
On this one, I'm sorry, Caroline, there is a mistake on the exhibit. No, go ahead, the next one. It should not include the parking lot. That may be ultimately in play in terms of expanding improvements, but the parcel in question should be, the portion of the parcel in question should be just the dirt lot to the left.
And to add to that, it is and as stated in the staff report, it is the intent of the city to sell the property to the adjacent landowner for a mixed-use affordable housing project. Another property in this declaration is the city-owned parcel located at the northeast corner of 5th and County Line Road. This is approximately 0.52 acres, and the intent here is to develop affordable senior housing. Finally, the city has property generally located at the northeast corner of 13th and Oakland that is not needed for right-of-way. That's the portion that's highlighted on the screen. Staff therefore believes it is exempt surplus land, and the intent is to convey this exempt land to the owner of the adjacent property for the hotel project. So with each of these properties, a resolution has been prepared to formalize the declaration pursuant to the Surplus Land Act. And attached to each resolution is an exhibit of each property, as we see on the screen, as well as a form of a letter from the state that will be sent to notice the required agencies of the surplus land that is available. So that letter, as Ray had mentioned earlier, has been provided to council as an amendment to the report and is also made available to the public. There is no fiscal impact associated with this item. However, revenue could be generated through the ultimate sale of some or all of the properties. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the attached resolutions, and there's one for each of the properties, the subject properties that we discussed this evening, declaring pursuant to Government Code Section 54221 that these real properties owned by the city at these different locations are not necessary for the city's use, as well as the one privately owned property to be declared exempt from the surplus land for public right-of-way. This concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
So are there any
I'm sorry if I may add to that real quick. As council is aware, there may or may not be some interest in some of these parcels, but this is a kind of a required step in the process, together with the noticing and in that effort to ultimately dispose of these properties either for an affordable housing project or some other use. So this is a necessary, required step pursuant to the Surplus Land Act.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
I have two. The first one, we can go to the 5th and County Line. Was that if I remember correctly, the property across the street, across Fifth, where the affordable housing was, I understood that, was the Eagle, was going to develop across the street another however many, 20 houses. Is that still, is this part of that process? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there may be others that are interested, but in this particular project or parcel, there certainly has been an interest from Eagle to develop that site.
Okay, so we can anticipate them expressing an interest then, and then putting a phase 2, if you will, on that site.
I would be surprised if they didn't, yes.
Okay, the other one is at Oakland and Colorado, that long one where the big yellow house is. Are there any amenities right now on that property? I thought there was a trail or something right there.
Yes.
So we want to get rid of the trail and sell it off, or
We would retain the trail easement and the right-of-way necessary for the improvements, but whatever is surplus after that would be available.
Okay, and that's anticipated, maybe the hotel developer might want to take some of that or all of that land that's available?
Be surprised if they weren't interested, yes.
Okay, thank you, I have no others.
John, do you have anything? No, sir. Bob?
So we're not interested in the property next to the YPAC for parking? We're gonna sell that off? Is that the idea?
There has been discussion regarding that over the years, and council has continued to make that determination. In the uptown, in uptown locations or downtown locations, folks strive to maintain that building after building block. Of course, we've got the Uptown Park next to it as well, and the alley, as a way to enhance pedestrian activity, you know, shopping from one place to another or stopping in at a restaurant from one place to another. And rather than having parking lots on your main drag, the goal is typically to have your public parking lots on the secondary road, if you will, which is part of the reason we built the parking lot, of course, next to the YPAC, but also to serve the YPAC, and the new parking lot that's under construction right now, you know, behind the buildings along the south side of Yucaipa Boulevard. So typically the goal is to try to do those public parking lots, not on your main drag, but off on the secondary streets.
Was this something we discussed in a prior?
It's been a while, yes.
I remember us wanting to retain this parcel for parking.
Well, we had.
I don't recall ever making that switch.
You actually had an exclusive negotiating agreement at one time with the owner of Yucaipa. And we had discussed moving ahead with not an extension because that one expired, but a new exclusive negotiating agreement along the way. So
For the one,
Not for that
not for
one.
that one.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the one between Yucaipa and the parking lot.
No, I'm talking about this one right here, that we retained for parking. We didn't retain the one near Yucaipa for parking. We retained the one.
The dirt lot next to the parking lot.
Correct.
Well, I can't talk about what has happened in closed session, but there has been some discussion about a project there, so.
What is the duration for this surplus? How long does this take to get the?
It takes
To go ahead.
60 days to go through the noticing process, and once you're through that noticing process, depending on which entity responds to the noticing process, you can move forward with the next step along the way.
Has Cludes got enough parking? Because once Cludes opens up next to Yucaipa, there's gonna be that's gonna be a big plus for the uptown. That's gonna bring a lot of cars up. Does he have enough parking there for that location?
I don't remember exactly what his application includes. Ben's telling me, yes, he's got enough parking. Again, if council would choose to exempt this or take this out of the list, you certainly can do that. There is no agreement right now with anybody for this development, for that development of that site. That is a policy decision that council may wish to, to pull this item from the rest of the property.
Well, if someone came in and offered us money for that because it's now considered surplus property, we would have to accept, or we still get to determine?
I'm sorry, you still
What they
get to
use.
negotiate and decide whether or not that's a appropriate, acceptable offer, if you will, and use. But it does indicate that you're willing to sell it. So, I would recommend if there is any concern about that particular site, pull that out of the list.
I would definitely like to pull that out of the list.
What are your thoughts, David?
I think there's enough conversation about that we can take it off the list now. We can always put it back on. That's not the issue, but I'd rather be in that position than be in the other position where, we should have used it for something else.
Are you okay with that, John?
I am.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion to accept adopt?
Do we have to read every one of those declarations, or?
I think you can just list it with the one removal, as listed in the staff report with that one removed.
I would like to make that recommendation to accept staff's recommendation to put the surplus properties up for sale with the exception of the portion of APN 0303-253-38.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further?
To declare these surplus properties other than 0303-253-38.
Correct.
Pursuant to staff recommendation. Okay. And to adopt the resolutions.
And to adopt said resolutions.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, so that takes us to item number 7. I believe this is for Megan.
Good evening, Mayor Bogue and council. As promised, I'm here this evening to provide a Community Services Department update. A few meetings ago, or actually a few months ago now, the Development Services Department was here providing you an update with their department, and this evening it is my turn. I am excited because with me tonight is the backbone of the Community Services Department, and that is your 3 Community Services Supervisor, Sarah Martinez, Mary Johnson, and Nick Johnson. In addition, not here with us this evening are the arms and legs of the department, and those are our 3 Community Services Coordinators, Margot, Elise, and Marcus. In addition, tomorrow, we will be opening 2 full-time Community Services Coordinator positions that were frozen. Finally, we have 1 full-time administrative assistant that is the brains of our operation that helps us complete all of our payments and day-to-day tasks. This structure will bring us back to the pre-pandemic structure of the Community Services Department. We also employ over 140 part-time staff in the various different divisions throughout the department. These staff are the face of the department. They are the people that you see every day working hard, and we are thankful for their passion and commitment to this community. I would also like to note that the Community Services Department is currently facing a part-time staff shortage in all divisions, and this is starting to slowly impact our programs and services being offered. We have to date held 3 job fairs, 1 in conjunction with Sorensen Engineering, as they are also having some difficulty hiring and filling full-time and part-time positions. Over the past couple city council meetings, the topic of safety has been discussed. And it is essential in a safe community to have police and fire resources. But what's also essential is to have programs and services provide people something to do. And that is exactly what the Community Services Department does. This evening, I'm going to give you a brief overview of 7 divisions that the department offers programs, services, and events in. The first division is our Crossing Guard Division. This is a partnership with Yucaipa Calamasa Joint Unified School District to, that's right, you guessed it, provide safe routes to school and provide crossing guards at intersections throughout the school district. I recently had the opportunity to be a crossing guard, and people are not good drivers around schools. So we are working with the police department to provide marketing opportunities on our social media platforms to remind people to stop at stop signs and slow down near school sites. The sports division. I'd like to highlight that this summer, the sports division held a summer camp, which is unlike a lot of other cities. However, due to COVID, there were various elements that changed from, the sports division didn't hold summer camps. It held a basketball camp this summer. And there were 122 children that participated in the camp. And the program took place from July 12th to July 28th. In addition, staff is currently working with youth and adult sports leagues such as Yucaipa Youth Basketball, Yucaipa Valley Youth Soccer Organization, Spartans, Yucaipa Valley National Little League, Yucaipa Valley All-American Little League, Yucaipa Calamasa Girls Softball, Yucaipa Junior All-American Football, and Major League Softball to reserve athletic spaces and provide programs for kids and adults this fall and winter. In addition, new this year will be a Pee Wee Spring Sports Program. Next up is our STARS Before and After School program. STARS represents science, technology, arts, recreation for success. This program was created to focus on homework assistance, academic enrichment, and collaborate with the Yucaipa Calamasa Joint Unified School District to meet the needs of students during this academic year. I would like to point out that through the last year during COVID, the STARS program continued on at the community center by providing students an opportunity to conduct online learning at the community center with site supervisors and recreational leader help. STARS opened registration for the 2021-2022 school year on July 20th, and currently the numbers up on the board show an average attendance of 435 students per week at Calamasa Elementary School, Chapman Heights Elementary, Dunlap Elementary, Inland Leaders Charter School, Mesa View Middle School, Parkview Middle School, Ridgeview Elementary School, Valley Elementary, and Wildwood Elementary. Next up is the camp. The camp program was offered this summer, which was unlike many other cities. However, due to COVID, there were some modifications that the program needed. We used to offer camp for TK through 8th grade, but this year, due to social distancing, we only had the capacity to offer camp from TK through 6th grade. Our camp was full the entire summer with a total of 319 students in the program. That's an average of 40 campers per week. Staff is currently working on fall camp. This camp program is offered as a safe place to provide for parents who work so that they can bring their children during non-academic holidays. The Aquatics Division. Again, unlike other cities, the city of Yucaipa opened its doors for swimming in May, and we offered recreational swim, family fun nights, aqua aerobics, and on the board or on the screen, you'll see that 1,536 participants took place in these drop-in programs this summer. In addition, the Community Services Aquatics staff offered for the first time in over 10 years American Red Cross Learn to Swim lessons with trained American Red Cross water safety instructors. A total of 904 participants participated in swim lessons this summer. In addition, in the beginning of the summer, the county had not released or relinquished the requirements that were on different areas of events and sports that were held. And so at the pool, you could not have rec swim. The county didn't allow it. And so we decided to offer pool reservations. You can reserve at any time throughout the summer. On June 14th, the county did lift those requirements. However, we did end up having more rentals than we had had in years. And that was a total of 58. Next up is the Special Events Division. This summer,
Megan, are we past those rentals now? Are
Yes.
They're all
they're
completed?
all completed, and the pool actually closes this Thursday. Our last recreational swim was yesterday, and Thursday is the last aqua aerobics for the season, and then the pool closed for the season.
Okay.
Special events, we started this summer with the 4th of July, and following the 4th of July were concerts in the park and movies in the park. Concerts in the park this summer, we had Eagles Experience, 80s Ladies, Griffin Hamlin and the Single Barrett Blues Band, Kings of 88, Surf City All-Stars, and the one and only Yucaipa's favorite, The Answer. We had an average attendance of 450 people at the concerts. The movies that we showed this summer were A Bug's Life, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Flubber. On October 8th and 9th, the city will hold the 9th annual Autumn Fest in historic Uptown. In addition to these special events, the Community Services Department is also in charge of processing special event permits. Several permits have been received to date, and staff will review the application, work with the applicant to complete the process, and have all appropriate city departments sign off on the permit. The Senior Services Division the Senior Center has been closed because of COVID, and it is currently being used as a vaccination site and a testing site. However, staff continued to work with Family Services Association to offer weekly meal distribution, and all throughout the year worked with USDA to offer a USDA commodities program that distributes a month's worth of food supply. Just recently, staff worked with Christ the Redeemer Church, so they have now taken over that program and will continue to offer the month's supply of food to over 75 people and deliver to over 50 homebound residents. In addition, staff worked with the contract instructors to offer senior contract classes at the Yucaipa Community Center and in the Yucaipa Community Park. Classes such as Tai Chi and chair aerobics continue to be offered. The community center continues to be the hub of the city and is open 6 days a week for drop-in programming such as the one and only pickleball, volleyball, basketball, and racquetball. The center is also available for rentals and contract classes. So far, the community center and the shelters have had 228 rentals take place since January 2021. The Yucaipa Performing Arts Center reopened its doors in May 2021, and the YPAC Outdoor Concert Series returned on June 5th. If I may bring your attention to the screen, the picture on the left was our first concert. It was Bruno and the Hooligans, and that was a socially distanced concert. So the only way that we were allowed to do that is if we sold tickets in pods. And we worked with the county to make sure that we fit within the guidelines, and we offered our first concert, and we're very excited about it. The concert after that was DSB, Journey Tribute, and the socially distanced requirements were no longer in place, so we were able to offer regular seating. On August 7th, we had Led Zeppelin, and I was so excited to be here tonight to look at City Council and let them know how successful the summer concert series had been. But unfortunately, Saturday, Queen Nation, that was our last concert that was scheduled, was Queen Nation, and the lead singer got sick, and we had to postpone that event. So in your staff report, you'll see an estimated expense and an estimated revenue. Currently, staff is working the expenses out and the revenues. We have offered ticket goers the option to keep their ticket, and we have rescheduled for July 2nd, 2022, or ticket goers are allowed, or ticket purchasers are allowed to receive a refund for that concert. The YPAC currently has 4 contract classes. The Yucaipa Rockin' Youth Studio, which provides youth an opportunity to be in a band. We also have private instructions for singing, drums, and guitar. And we have an artist academy. To highlight a few things of the Community Services Department, we were awarded $202,364 from the U.S. Small Business Administration for the Shuttered Venue Grant, for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And the Community Services Department would like to thank the Finance Department, in particular Skylar, for all the help to provide the finances information to the grant, and they were a catalyst in us obtaining that grant. In addition, City Council approved a cost recovery percentage for the Community Services Department of 65% in 2018 when fees were approved. And I'd like to highlight 2 divisions at this time. The Aquatics Division went from 15% cost recovery to 50% cost recovery this summer, and the Yucaipa Performing Arts Center went from 44% cost recovery to 87% cost recovery. There is no fiscal impact at this time, and staff is asking City Council to receive and file the 2021 Community Services Department Report Update. I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
So are there any questions for staff? John, you have anything? No?
Good presentation, very, very thorough. With respect to the meal delivery service for shut-ins, I was under the impression that we didn't have enough volunteers to do that. Or did we finally get enough volunteers to drive to the shut-ins and deliver meals? Or are we still looking for volunteers?
That is the USDA Commodities Program. We were able to complete the program up until August of this year. And for the month of September, we have now transitioned that over to Christ the Redeemer Church, and they will continue the homebound deliveries. We have completed them, but they will now take over that as they have several volunteers with their church. But your statement this evening is correct. We really struggled throughout the pandemic to find volunteers to help deliver those meals.
Okay, and finally, on the sports division, how many youth took advantage of our CBDG grant program?
I'm really glad that you brought that question up. So we are awarded $13,500 from CDBG to provide scholarships to low to moderately low income families. And those scholarships can be used for sports programs, the STARS before and after school programs, senior services, any programs and services offered throughout the Community Services Department. And we do see about 90% actually used for STARS before and after school program, and then the other 10% for seniors and sports. We were awarded $13,500, and we used, I believe, approximately $11,400 for the fiscal year 2020-2021. And of that 11.4, I want to say it was right around 312 families that were helped, or individuals.
Oh, good, good. I liked hearing that. Thank you very much. Good answer.
Mr. Mayor, if there are other, I'll wait till there are other questions.
Bob, do you have something? Go ahead, Ray.
If I may, I just want to say for the record, and you heard Megan talk about the grant, you heard her talk about, filling the frozen positions. This was very, very difficult, this transition between shutdown and open up. And the fact that we had a number of frozen positions that we couldn't open up and fill until after we knew about the ARPA funding potential and the new budget year, which was July 1st. And so a couple of things. Number one, Megan, Mary, Sarah, Nick, their whole team deserves so much credit for, number one, pivoting as rules changed from the state through the county to us. Number two, adding the efforts associated with the vaccinations and testing in some of our facilities. And number three, really burning the candle at both ends because we didn't have those coordinator positions as we got the summer concert series going and all of that. And as she mentioned, we started filling the coordinator positions in July, and we're filling the last two now. But they really have all worked around the clock to put on this programming. And on top of that, I asked them last spring to do this grant. And there aren't a lot of folks that I don't think our size, our type of venue that have been successful in that program. I don't know if Megan has found out something otherwise, but at least in terms of other city managers that I've talked to, for us to go out and get a couple $100,000 grant for the shuttered venue program was the federal shuttered venue program. In the midst of all this, I'm very happy to report that they worked hard at it. As Megan said, Skylar helped, but they had to do the heavy lifting. So I guess I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank them for those efforts and, just working with the changes as they occurred in terms of the state and county requirements. So I just wanted to mention that today.
All right. Yes, the Community Service Department was by far the most heavily impacted of all of our city departments, and it was a tough 2020. I have a quick question for you. When it comes to the YPAC, I noticed that we have, it looks like 17 rentals in just a few months. How does that compare to when we first opened YPAC? Because I believe YPAC was really only open for, 8 months before we had to close?
That's correct. So I believe it was early 2020 or right around the end of the fiscal year, council provided direction to city staff to transition the YPAC into more of a rental facility, a little bit less YPAC presents shows. So we only did 4 shows this summer, and our rentals have tripled. To say that people are interested in the YPAC is an understatement. Our coordinator was there on Friday and had, I believe it was 3 walkthroughs with different interested parties. And so the YPAC has become a very successful place for rentals, weddings, quinceañeras, funerals, conferences.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great news. I know that was our goal to get the community involved, and they're definitely more involved. So thank you. Great presentation. Anything else? You guys have anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you. It was a rough row to hoe, and you guys pulled it off spectacularly. Thank you so much for your efforts. Gosh, I'm very proud of you guys, actually, after listening to all of this. Good job.
All right, so this is just a receive and file, so we'll just leave it at that. Great job. All right, so let's move on to item number 8. And this is Landon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report tonight is for the proposed construction contract to complete the Wilson 3 Basin Phase 1B improvements. I'll start by highlighting just a little history of where we've come this last summer. Just this last city council meeting on September 13th, the Phase 1A improvements that were recently constructed were accepted as complete. And on the slide before you is the general areas where that work took place. It involved the clearing and grubbing, over 1 million cubic yards of mass excavation and grading, primarily for the Wilson Creek Channel and the main basin area. Transport of that material within the site to the fill areas, stockpiling of material and oversized rock, and the interim basin spillway at 2nd Street for conveyance to the downstream, and protection of properties for flood protection, as well as the grading for the realigned Wilson Creek Channel that enters this area where it was prior kind of cut through what is now this under construction development site here for the Woodside homes. And with those Phase 1A improvements in place and council's prior approvals to complete this large project in phases, the Phase 1B improvements represents the next phase. This slide before you highlights the area where these proposed improvements will be taking place. They primarily involve the protection of areas within the realigned channel here with riprap, drainage improvements, conveying storm flows from the construction of the city yard site, as well as some of the drainage from the church site, slope drains on some of the graded slopes, as well as fencing along the access road property boundary along the church property here in accordance with the land conveyance agreement. One main benefit of completing the Phase 1B improvements now is to minimize erosion in these newly graded areas of the channel section in preparation for the upcoming storm season, especially with the location being immediately downstream of these recent burn areas from the El Dorado fire. The improvements along the church property will also serve as a public safety improvement with the fencing going in, with that active school and church site there with the track, recreation areas. And I think it's important to note that some areas of the channel itself, although we will be lined with riprap, there are areas in that channel that will remain a soft bottom to just really promote that recharge, that groundwater recharge in the channel itself. The remaining phase to be complete is what we're characterizing as Phase 2. And so that's what's on the screen before you here. There are the inlet structures that will be constructed with that phase here at the Oak Glen Road crossing, as well as the conveyance of the Oak Glen Creek where it joins this newly realigned Wilson Creek Channel. The permanent basin and lake improvements with the landscaping, the multi-use trail fencing that will go in with that, all of the 2nd Street improvements, including the abutment and then the outlet structure to the downstream channel section and ultimately the downstream recharge area. This next slide shows a conceptual plan of that ultimate landscaped improvement with the park area here with all of those phases in place. And then this slide shows some of the areas that highlight where that recharge is taking place. In combination with the flood protection, the recharge is a very important component of this project. And it's not only taking place at the dedicated infiltration area down here in the main basin area, but also along Oak Glen Creek and in Wilson Creek Channel and the downstream Phase 2 channel as well. This next slide is showing the funding proposed for the project currently in the CIP. This slide is on page 103 of the agenda packet, and it also shows the available funding in the current CIP and including the proposed ARPA funding that's summarized in the report in the amount of $927,000. And that is a part of the recommendation with this item here. So currently the available funding, excluding the state revolving loan fund, which is still in the review process with the Water Quality Control Board, in the amount of $14.4 million. This next slide summarizes the cost to date for the Wilson 3 project. Up here at the top is focused on the soft cost, or the environmental and design cost, totaling about $3.4 million, and then just these line items highlighting which phase those costs were attributed to for that total of $3.46 million. And then with the recently approved or accepted contract work by JMI for the Phase 1A, that total construction budget amounted to $4.38 million for the total cost of $7.8 there. Down here, this line is the Phase 1B proposed construction cost budget. When you combine that with the 7.8, the difference between the available funding is approximately $5 million. And it's important to note that the available funding included in these tables are committed funding with the CIP, and some of those include funding sources that may become available in the coming year. One example of that would be the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District Financial Participation Agreement in the amount of $1.8 million. That's anticipated to go to their board later in October, and that funding source will become available shortly after. The proposed Phase 1B project was advertised for bids this summer, and 8 bids were received, of which the lowest responsible bidder was LB3 Enterprises. This next slide here shows the proposed construction budget for that, including the contingency and project management line items there, for a total project budget in the amount of $1,469,595. And finally, this last slide shows the estimated Phase 2 costs to date, some of which are those soft or engineering costs up here, and then the remaining estimate for the construction and the mitigation associated with the impacts to the waters of state in the U.S. for that total cost down there. Once again, the recommendation for the allocation of the ARPA funding to fund this proposed phase of improvements is based on the recent ARPA criteria that we feel this project meets with respect to stormwater capture and water quality and groundwater recharge, and the available balance to us at this time. And staff will return to council in the near future with the recommendation regarding reallocation of funding from this project to other projects. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you much. All right, so that takes us to item number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take this one. Members of the council, before you is a citywide department reorganization. Has a number of elements, but probably the largest element is the restructuring of the finance department from administrative services and finance to just finance. And the goal here is to allow the finance group to focus all of its attention on budget, auditing, daily, monthly, financial requirements, financial reporting requirements. And as council is aware, we've had a couple of issues that we've resolved and continue to resolve, and I think we've gotten through most of that process. But I think part of the challenge has been the group having to focus on HR issues, workers' comp, unemployment issues, JPA issues relative to Parsec, now CIRA, and others, while focusing on the finance issues as well. And so going back 3 or 4 years, I think that evolution at that time had contributed to some of those challenges back then that we are dealing with and addressing now. And so staff's recommendation is to bifurcate the HR, workers' comp, unemployment-related issues from finance, move those into the city manager's department, and promote that executive assistant to do those actions or do those activities, some of which she had done in the past before they were moved over to finance, but others there are new responsibilities as well. In addition, staff's recommending upgrading an assistant accountant position to a full accountant position and one more accountant position in the finance department, again, to address those issues. One of the accountant positions in the finance department is intended to work primarily on grant funding, on reimbursements, on tracking grant, financial grant related issues. Therefore, that position is likely to be about 60%, maybe 50+% reimbursable. That's not in your fiscal analysis. The cost from here forward is estimated to be $117,000 out of the something like $150,000 that was approved in the organizational enhancement line item. But that doesn't include the reimbursement amount, which is probably in the $45,000 to $50,000 range for this year. So the net cost is actually quite a bit less than the $117,000 related to the accountant position. In addition to bifurcating the admin services into finance and moving the HR-related items over to the city manager's department, staff is also recommending reallocating the information systems manager's position, given the market as it, the job market, the ability to hire someone in that range, given the market the way it is right now, and also the network support specialist upgraded to a network administrator position, again, for the same reasons. That particular position reflects the incumbent doing much more responsible work as well. So both of those positions, staff is recommending upgrading. We're also recommending creating one administrative assistant position, again, by eliminating the senior HR position in finance, reallocating some of those activities to city manager's department, and adding a few more. The idea is to add an administrative assistant to support that effort in the city manager's department and in the general services department and their efforts to continue the process of succession planning, particularly as it relates to mobile home park issues. In addition, the other accountant position is going to be tasked with some of those daily and weekly and monthly requirements that, again, we are continuing to strive to keep up with. And then finally, staff is recommending another extension to the MV Ching and Associates contract. We continue to have several vacant positions in finance as it stands today that they're helping us with. And with the loss of our information systems manager, we also have a need in information systems that they have the expertise to help us with. And so staff is recommending extending their contract by another $175,000, likely no more than about 6 months, the time it will take us to fill those positions, assuming City Council approves the reorganization before you today. Again, from a estimated cost for the rest of the year, we've included $117,000 in your fiscal impact and some change. That's going to be somewhat less by the amount of about $45,000 to reflect the ability to charge back some of that accountant position that is working on grant-funded efforts, and annualized costs of $156,000, again, minus that that chargeback number, if you will, for that particular accountant. With that, staff is available to answer any questions you may have about the proposed reorganization.
All right, so are there any questions for staff? You have anything, Bob? No? John? So you're looking at excluding item number 3, the net impact, the net fiscal impact would be around $72,000
Correct.
with all these changes?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's $72,000 more per year, is that what?
For the rest of this fiscal year, an estimated increase of $72,000 to our salaries cost.
What is it annually after the next fiscal year? What's the annual cost?
It'd be $156,000, I
What's
think
that?
was the number, minus probably about 60,000, so it'd be just under 100,000.
And this takes us back to the levels that we were more or less pre-pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. It gets us pretty close. There's a few other things that we might be looking at in a phase 2, but this gets us pretty close to what we were a number of years ago in some of the departments, in that structure and in that mindset. The change, when I say a number of years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, before we moved some of the HR stuff into finance, it gets us pretty close to that.
Okay. So with that, is there a motion to?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to item number 10. Is this for me?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. This item is the authorization of final payment for the Yucaipa Boulevard 15th Street to I-10 Freeway Improvement Project, specifically the utility relocations that occurred between 18th and the I-10 Freeway. As part of the overall Yucaipa Boulevard widening project from 15th to the freeway, staff did work with the various utility companies, with Frontier, Spectrum Cable, and both divisions of Edison, their transmission and distribution divisions, to relocate their overhead facilities for the widening project. With the franchise agreements that are currently in place between the city and the utility companies, the utility companies would be 100% responsible for the cost of relocating their facilities to accommodate the street widening. The photo on the screen is from around 2016, and it's on Yucaipa Boulevard facing north or northeast. And you can see the Edison aerial facilities along the south or the right side of the street, along with the cable and phone lines. And then the same thing on the left-hand side is the Edison distribution and the cable and phone lines. One of the options that was reviewed as part of the relocation of the utilities was the undergrounding of those facilities. And with that option, the city would have to pay for a portion of the cost to underground those facilities. The remainder of the underground costs would be covered by the utility companies as part of their relocation efforts that are required as part of the franchise agreement. The undergrounding of those facilities would provide several benefits. Obviously, some economic development opportunities would be created in the area, and specifically along the segment where the utilities would be placed underground. It would also improve the aesthetics to this primary entrance to the city, or this gateway to the city. And it would also improve the overall utility infrastructure, not just within this area, but also in the region, since many of these distribution and utility lines, and also the cable and phone lines, to provide service to other areas of the city. City Council chose the underground option, and in 2016 did approve several agreements with Edison, both Edison Transmission and Edison Distribution. The agreements were regarding the undergrounding work, and that would occur as part of the Yucaipa Boulevard widening project. And with the agreements in place, Edison would provide the engineering design, the inspection during construction, and they would also install all the cabling and all the equipment that would be required as part of the underground. The city's responsibility would be the installation of the, what they called their civil engineering work, their underground infrastructure installation, and that would occur, again, as part of the street widening project, utilizing the city's contractor at the time. The total estimated cost to the city for the underground work, the Edison-related underground work identified in the agreement was in the amount of about $719,000. The total actual cost to the city to complete this work was just under $600,000, so that resulted in the savings of about $119,000. The city's total cost for the underground work, including the actual cost, so the cost to Edison and also the cost to install the underground infrastructure, that total cost was about $1,174,000. That amount will be reimbursed to the city by the future development of the undeveloped properties that are within this segment of Yucaipa Boulevard, between 18th Street and Yucaipa Boulevard, or 18th Street and the I-10 freeway. All of the work that was identified in the agreements has been completed by both the city and Edison. At this time, SCE is requesting the final payment for the work identified in the agreement that was completed by them. I'd just like to share this next photo, which is essentially the after photo. This is before, and this is after, and as you can see, the street widening is being completed. The majority of the aerial utilities are now underground, and as I mentioned, there is an aesthetic benefit to this project along with the other benefits.
That looks incredible, by the way. That's amazing, the difference. I forgot what it looked like before.
And as part of this item, I just wanted to share this map or this exhibit that council has seen before, and primarily to show that this project, not only the street widening project, but the utility underground project, is part of a series of other projects that have been completed in this section or this portion of the city, in the Dunlap area of the city. This exhibit does identify many of the other drainage projects, street widening projects, utility projects, our pavement rehabilitation projects, sidewalk projects that are identified in green to support the elementary school, Dunlap Elementary and the high school, and also in purple are the public facility projects. So this shows, this exhibit does show that the city has invested in infrastructure in the Dunlap area, and over the years, City Council has prioritized many projects, again, in the Dunlap area. Staff's recommendation tonight is that City Council authorize the final payment to Edison in the amount of $269,859.09 for the completion of the overhead relocation and underground relocation of both the Edison transmission and distribution facilities. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions.
All right, are there any questions for staff?
Pretty cut and dry. You owe money.
But money well spent, right?
Money well spent.
I think it looks incredible, so.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, so that's going to take us to a study session, and looks like it's in Ben's hands.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Excited to be here to talk about the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan, and specifically kind of talking about the open space and hillside overlay requirements. The city, in conjunction with our project management team at STAD, as well as our consultant PlaceWorks, is diligently working on developing an updated land use plan for it. And as part of developing that plan is getting a good understanding of the open space and hillside requirements as we move forward. And so wanted to provide a study session to help nail down some of those key directions following the prior study session that council had on the project. So, as council may recall, the freeway corridor specific plan itself was adopted in 2008. However, no development has happened in that freeway corridor specific plan. And then certainly substantive changes in the market have also occurred. And so this update really is intended to reflect those changes and create a development pattern that is feasible and implementable and pragmatic for those that would want to develop it. And then certainly, since our general plan update in 2016 is trying to make sure that, you know, it recognizes that it's a potential key asset in the city, especially in terms of residential and commercial development. And so the update is intended to help carry those provisions and ensure that that policy framework is in place to ensure that it is developed. Now, as part of the June 14th study session, some key directions on the update was provided, and then there was a discussion on the Hillside Overlay. Currently, as council may recall, the Hillside Overlay establishes natural open space, so meaning it is untouched in any form. And then essentially any of the recreational amenities that would be desired, such as trail connections, are not included in that open space requirements. And then any sort of grading that's needed to create a developable pad is excluded. So essentially the building area shown on the plans of what could be developed is actually much smaller in order to make those matchup gradings. And so as part of the development constraints currently in the plan, a lot of the site is actually less developable than what was relayed in the specific plan because of that constraint. And so council did give indication that modification to these strategies for the Hillside Overlay is a pragmatic solution to ensuring the developable area of the specific plan. And so with that, the direction was to focus on key assets. And so this study session is really to help nail down those elements as we move forward. Now, kind of the discussion's kind of broken into two different spots. One is the land uses in the open space and how to best manage that. And then the second part is kind of focusing on key view sheds and getting input from city council on what areas are the most important to preserve in terms of the community benefit, and then using that to establish some of the key priority open space boundaries for that. And so as part of it, I did want to, we kind of provided an example of some sites that may be considered for that. One is along Interstate 10 of the freeway, and kind of using that bluff that's along the south side of the freeway as kind of a key priority zone, or using that natural buffer, and then essentially screening any development further behind, with the exception of the pumpkin patch, which is at grade level itself. And then the other spot that had been historically of area of concern was the Oakland Road kind of corridor adjacent to Colorado Street. And so that's another spot as well. As part of these discussions on the open space and Hillside, we did reach out to the property owners and key stakeholders of the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan. Generally, the topic was acceptable, except for the property owner along Oakland Road did have some concerns about that limitation, but wanted to provide this information for City Council for consideration as we move forward. If these are key priority zones, if there's any other spots that also may be warranted, we can certainly keep that as kind of the focus from there. And so kind of the approach for it is making sure that these visible areas are preserved, kind of keeping that rural aesthetic to the community along those visible gateways, establishing really the gateway elements for the city. So when you're driving through and visiting the city, you have more defined features that kind of set the tone of what the community is all about. I do want to note, however, as part of the open space and hillside stuff, it is intended for areas to be left natural. However, many of these open space areas themselves are not. An example is the grazing that occurs along Oakland Road and many other of the open space areas, as well as some of the trenching that's been done, but certainly a key spot that I think many of the community enjoys is this little kind of dead tree element. It's a little horseshoe. It's kind of a defining visual feature as well. And then certainly as part of the efforts is designing site criteria to protect those views. And so an example, this was provided by an applicant for one of the properties in the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan, is using the grading from the freeway elevation to essentially screen any activity behind it. So the areas visible from the freeway would retain a natural appearance, either modified with contour grading in natural vegetation or preserved in another form, and then using the grade elevation change to essentially screen any of that activity from the freeway. And so that would apply for both commercial uses as well as the residential uses that could be planned, really keeping that so it isn't a freeway exposure and kind of maintains that more naturalistic appearance. And then the other discussion is kind of in regards to the open space requirements. As I mentioned earlier, the natural open space itself is to be left natural. It's maintained and owned by the property owner. So essentially, in addition to their match-up grading that's required, they have this big portion of land that is essentially untouched and unavailable. One of the key elements is that other recreational amenities such as trails aren't included in this. As part of the specific plan, currently there are no trails exhibits listed on how to connect these features other than what's listed in the general plan. And so we can be more deliberate with this update to really kind of leverage key assets and go from there. And then some other opportunities. One is the site matchup grading, allowing that to qualify in the open space, provided that the grading and vegetation matches more of a naturalistic appearance. Providing those recreational amenities, allowing for agricultural planting, so the pumpkins, for example, being a qualified land use within that. Also, as part of the city's wine country planning efforts, vineyards may be another acceptable type of green activity within those open space areas that council may consider. Also allowing for drainage-related improvements. As council may know, there is a big drainage channel that goes through the freeway corridor specific plan, and allowing some of these different improvements that could occur, similar to other city projects, including groundwater recharge being qualifying elements for the open space. And then finally, the city of Calamasa, directly south of our freeway corridor specific plan, has their own specific plan that they're looking to update. And so leveraging perhaps some of those open space boundaries that they have to create bigger pockets of continuous or contiguous open space boundaries. And then as part of this implementation, there's kind of two different ways we can go about it. One is maintaining the open space percentage requirements with the modification under the current general plan, which frees up about 37 acres, but allowing a little bit more of that green space rather than just strictly natural open space. And then the other alternative is strictly to remove that percentage breakdown, but establish more defined criteria for what assets should be preserved, and then using that to guide the land use plan instead. And so that is kind of sums up my discussion on it. Happy to get any input from council members on the best way to proceed with open space and hillside requirements in our freeway corridor specific plan update.
Well, before we go into questions, I have something else to add. I've been back on those properties multiple times for years, and I think it's important to know that that area in the back there has been graded. So it's not actually natural open space. They've been grading that area back there for years, I believe, for water retention. And you can go back there and you can see that they built all through that, mostly on the east side. It isn't natural. Everyone thinks it's natural, but it's not. You can see that they built berms to retain water, and it's like that all the way through back there. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. So.
Yeah, that is correct. There's the agricultural operations in some of that natural open space area. There's grazing activities, and then there's certainly other activities, including there's an apiary up on the top of the hill as well. So there's certainly a number of different agricultural type uses that have been in effect in that natural open space.
Right. I'm more specifically talking about the Robinson property, and it looks like it's something that's been done, I want to say 50, 60 years ago. It's definitely overgrown, but you can tell that someone's been back there grading for a number of years. Anyways, so with that, we do have a number of things to talk about, and I've jotted down a few here. I guess we'll start with protecting ridge lines. You want to start with? So this is a study session, so go ahead and what are your thoughts on protecting the ridge lines? And
Do you want me to go first? Yeah, I'll go first. I think it's important that we keep that rural flavor by protecting our ridge lines. I think it adds it speaks to the quality of life in which we are trying to achieve, a more natural lifestyle. And while we use the word not natural, I think some uses such as cattle or something like that is a more organic field rather than putting some structures there. I think maybe we can change from natural to maybe organic, something that reflects again, the Yucaipa lifestyle, we have chickens and cows and horses, and putting cows on the side of the hill is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion, than some sort of skyline that includes buildings. I understand that we're considering developing on the other side of the hills there on the south side. Again, we want to maintain a limited skyline, so we just see the hilltops and we don't see the tops of structures, whether they be residences or any type of commercial building. I think that's important to maintain, again, so it speaks to what Yucaipa is about.
All right, so I first of all, I realized I misspoke. I said ridge lines, but in all reality, we're talking about view lines, and I think that's different, right?
The view sheds.
View sheds, right? Sorry, view sheds.
What is a view shed? What does that mean? What you can see from the freeway, or what you can see from Calamasa Boulevard or from Oakland Road? Is that what a view shed is?
So the view shed kind of goes along the line with kind of the ridge lines. It's an area of visual interest that's visible from areas of the public. And so it's kind of leveraging the ridgeline being an example of a common visual view shed that may be preserved. And so in this context, what I had provided kind of with the arrows is using that bluff, that kind of ridge, as the key view shed from Interstate 10. And then along the same vein, Oakland Road, that kind of hillside, that kind of grazing area as part of that view shed, specifically along that entrance as well.
So in reality, what would it cost? I mean, everybody's always concerned about the view shed or about the mountain or the hill or whatever you want to categorize it as. It would be cost prohibitive to actually grade that down and move that dirt, wouldn't it?
So if I may, part of this is, if you look at the topo, aerial photo there, and if you go back to the section, Ben, the alignment of that view shed and that ridge top is very irregular. Some places it's back quite a way, some places it's closer to the freeway. And so there's an interest in realigning that aesthetic, if you will, that ridge line and that view shed, but maintaining that front slope as something that looks more natural, that is up to council whether you allow the pumpkins or you allow vineyards, or whether you want to reestablish many of the oak trees along that front slope are dying. So maybe there's some areas where you want to reestablish oak trees, but it makes sense to grade that frontage just because it is so irregular, and then reestablish that view shed as we talked about earlier. So I think that is cost effective, and I think it makes sense in terms of maintaining that semi-rural feel that Councilmember Avila mentioned. So, and then I do want to mention along Oakland Road, more specifically, the request was to maintain developable property at the northeast quadrant of that intersection of Oakland and Calamasa Boulevard. That's the request of that property owner. But he was okay with the rest of that frontage, maintaining that slope aesthetic look that we're talking about. So the two questions really are preserving that view shed concept, allowing some regrading in some locations, and then two, what would be allowed on that slope, and whether vineyards or pumpkins or if it's supposed to be preserved for just the way it is, quote unquote natural. And of course, as Ben mentioned, it's not natural anymore because of the grazing and the other things. So those are really the two major questions relative to that view shed.
So it's not natural because the cows graze? Is that takes away the natural
Yeah,
sort of...
it's not the natural sage that would otherwise be there, or whatever else might grow, buckwheat, whatever else might grow in its place.
You know, we never talk about that gigantic gorge. We never talk about that catastrophe of a gorge that everybody's always concerned about the view shed or the hill, but nobody's ever concerned about what in the world to do.
What gorge are you talking about?
You haven't seen that, have you been on that property on the back and all the, walked around it and all that? Because there's a gigantic gorge there from a washout from Wilson Creek or one of the creeks. There's
You can see it there in the picture, that big
I mean, it's
white line.
gigantic.
It is very large.
It is. If I may respond to that real quick, that is part of the concept here. If you preserve the open space between that ridge line and the gorge, as you mentioned, and then you include along the way some recharge/detention basin improvements in that gorge, you're still going to have to do a little bit of regrading, but it may also reduce your downstream costs in terms of channel improvements and the bridge we're working on right now on Live Oak Road. So you're absolutely right, that gorge is huge, but we do think that there's an opportunity here with the open space area to incorporate the kinds of detention recharge basins that we've been doing throughout the community.
Does that get categorized as part of the Hillside Overlay percentages, that gigantic gorge? And I mean, is there a need or is there a desire from anyone to keep that natural as far as the gorge is concerned? Because if you do anything with that, you're gonna have to grade it, you're gonna have to cut dirt, you're gonna have to do a lot of things to the bottom of it to sort of make it usable or feasible, right?
So I think when City Council took up the Hillside Ordinance a number of years ago, those gorges throughout the community were exempted from those analyses. But I would say that one of your options tonight, and there may be others, but one of your options tonight is to focus the open space preservation, if you will, on those areas that lend themselves well to either combining with what might be happening in Calamasa, adjacent to county line, or opportunities for recreational activity as opposed to public recreational activity, as opposed to being under continued ownership of the property owner with no methodology for allowing for that ongoing open space. So use of the open space. So I think the idea of having that ridgeline and front slope visual benefit to the community, the ability to put a trail along that ridgeline, perhaps down into the channel and along the basins, if that becomes part of the strategy. Those open space opportunities are much more accessible to the public rather than setting aside a big chunk of property that wouldn't otherwise be accessible to the public. So that is one of the options that we're asking for your consideration of this evening.
Well, you mind?
Well, no, go ahead. I've got a lot more to say. I'll let you talk.
My opinion is that I am okay with realigning that and making it more usable, trying to keep that view shed. I think that's what people are looking forward. Because if there's anything that's going to be developed on the backside, then most people won't even realize that it's there. I'm also okay with using the open space for planting. I think that's
For what?
Planting.
Planting, oh yeah.
Whatever, I mean, I guess pumpkins or whatever need be in that area. So I'm okay with that if we can, as long as we keep that view shed.
No, I agree. It's a more natural, again, it's more, in my opinion, more aesthetically pleasing, and it flows a little bit easier. Open hillsides, some agriculture, that all kind of goes with the lifestyle that Yucaipa wants to be.
And by maintaining that view shed, I mean, it is less, I see it as less grading. You're doing a lot less grading than flattening the whole area out, so. Anyway, go ahead, Bob.
So reality is, if you go to, let's say, Live Oak, and you stand there and you look at the pumpkin patch, and you look to the right, you see that flat area that Ken Robinson owns. That, there's no question about that. That has a massive gorge down the road, but that flat area there is developable land, and that's not affecting anything. Then you look over toward the pumpkin patch, you've got that ridge line, And my comments earlier was, you're not ever going to grade that down because it would cost too much money, and I wouldn't even want to, but to try to utilize as much flat land going toward the gorge and onto County Line Road. But when you step across over to the other side and you look at Ken Robinson's property, I'm not sure, you know, where that horseshoe was, that piece of wood that's been there since I've forever, probably. I mean, I don't know what you do with that. I don't know how you develop that and still maintain a view shed unless you just cut down the front and leave the view shed. I don't know what you do with that. The other side is a little easier to work with. And as you move down Calamasa Boulevard, it sort of dips down and flattens out and becomes usable land without affecting the mountains. But are we here to decide what percentage to change the hillside ordinance? Are we here to, what are we trying to decide?
So a couple of things. One of your options is to continue to apply the Hillside Ordinance. The changes that were reflective of the decision that was made by council 5 or 6 years ago through our analysis didn't have much of a impact on the set-aside area in the freeway corridor specific plan. Only changed it by 37 acres over like 400 and some acres of open space. So not a big change. The other option tonight is to focus on those view sheds, those ridge lines, the opportunity to collaborate with the changes that Calamasa is looking at with their specific plan so that those open spaces work together on the backside, if you will, on County Line, but along the I-10 freeway, focus on that view shed, continue to make that as semi-rural as we can. I will say, just a reminder, that view shed right now, that ridge line right now along the I-10 is very inconsistent. And so the projects that have been considered by the private community include some realignment of that view shed, but still reestablishing that view shed as natural, or if you want, if pumpkins are okay or vineyards are okay, but some realignment there. And then on Oakland Road, the request of that property owner was to allow just that intersection to be developable on both sides, the northeast quadrant and the southeast quadrant, recognizing there's certainly some value in the rest of that slope area along Oakland Road remaining natural. You could still, if council so chooses, increase the developable area on the other side of that ridge, which is kind of consistent with what you're talking about on the south side of the I-10 freeway. And so there's an opportunity on the other side of that ridge. You still have the same open space set aside along that gorge, if you will, on the north side of the freeway. There's that, most of you I'm sure are familiar with that kind of curvilinear gorge there on the north side of the freeway. Much of that is in the current freeway corridor specific plan as open space, but that could certainly be aligned, and the backside of that slope along Oakland Road more developable than what your current freeway corridor specific plan allows for. So you could accomplish the same things along Oakland Road where you protect that view shed, allow vineyards if you want, or pumpkins, probably not pumpkins there, probably vineyards there. And then the question there on top of that is, would you allow some developable area on that northeast quadrant or make that whole thing open space?
And if
Well, just really quick, because I gave my statement about the, go ahead and fix the view shed, and I'm okay with using the open space, but on that northeast corner, is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That's elevated, correct?
Yes.
And there's no way they're gonna bring that down to grade. I don't see that happening.
A lot of dirt.
But I wouldn't be opposed to having them put something there. Not the whole quadrant. I mean, I don't think that would work anyway, but I'm okay with that.
I agree with Councilman Avila that I'd like to keep it as rural as possible. I've changed my views a couple of times on this, but I want to keep that the city of Yucaipa as rural as possible. But again, that's really the only land that we have to develop. anything that's going to bring the kind of sales tax revenue to this city that we need to pay for police and firefighters. So that's a big deal. And I know that we had a great presentation on community services, and I don't want to undermine that because it was a great presentation, and that's a very important part, as well as pavement. Pavement's so expensive. But police and firefighters, with this society and the way it's going, we have to keep in mind that that area there, we've got to allow something there, change, modify, to keep it as rural as we can, but to provide the revenue that the city's going to need going forward.
Is that your answer on the south side, or are you talking about the north?
Altogether.
Everything?
Altogether. I want to
Are you okay with realigning the view shed along the Interstate 10?
Yes.
And then,
I don't know what realigning the view shed means. You mean cut the top off or push it up against it as far as you can, or?
It means that, that the development along the I-10 freeway on the other side of the ridgeline can be more developable if that view shed is more parallel to the I-10 freeway. Now it's very
Right, no, I agree with that.
curvilinear.
now, Ray, would we need to write out an area or draw out an area where the hillside ordinance would not apply so that they could do what they would need to do?
Yeah, if what I'm hearing is accurate, I think what we would come back to you with is the area of open space and the view sheds, the ridge lines that are in a specific zone along the I-10 freeway and along County Line Road where there might be an opportunity to match up with Calamasa, and along Oakland Road. I don't know that I would call it the hillside ordinance anymore. I think I would just characterize it as open space area that has certain requirements and opportunities. And so based on the input we received tonight, we would come back to you with a map that shows you that and what that criteria would be and what those requirements would be.
Okay.
And Mayor Bogue took me out one time coming off of County Line Road out in the backwoods there, or that back area there. And most folks that are concerned about the view shed have never been back there. And there's just a whole different world back there. A lot of land that could be utilized and wouldn't even be noticed by most of our patrons.
Just real fast, I'm sorry, are you?
I'm done, yeah, I'm good, yeah. I think.
We've talked about realigning Calamasa Boulevard. What impacts does that mean to that intersection at Wildwood and I-10?
That's a great question. It would belly out that curve, if you will, which would by itself accomplish quite a bit of grading if we went forward with that project. And so that would probably make the adjacent property owner more developable, just because the realignment of Calamasa Boulevard would excavate a significant amount of dirt there, so.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, the northeast quadrant is that area that we're talking about where you want to realign Calamasa Boulevard?
Yeah, it would be the, whatever property is remaining in addition to that, of course.
Okay, and then across Oakland Road is Ed Haddad's project, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And if I may, one thing I didn't mention in my summary a minute ago, I do think that when we come back to you, we'll come back to you with some more comprehensive trail connectivity and trail locations and potential for passive recreational opportunities in conjunction with the recharge basin, detention basin that we think is an important part of this overall plan. So we'll bring that back to you together with that delineated area with those requirements and conditions based on what we're hearing tonight.
Okay, and if I understand Councilmember Duncan's comments, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to put something in that northeast quadrant because it is consistent with across the street, and we can mitigate, we can smooth it out, make it softer, and still provide the that natural as opposed to, well, whatever term we want to use for the rest of the hills.
And if I may add, on the prior study session, we did reference possibly the modification to the roadway alignment for Kyle Mesa Boulevard to improve kind of that intersection geometry as well. And so,
That's gonna be a lot of dirt to move to straighten that out. That's a big.
600,000 yards, if I remember right.
100,000 yards? Wow.
600,000.
Oh, 600,000.
And then we also need to consider that we're going to work with the city of Calamasa on an open space down by county line, the county line.
Right.
And that's just basically a yes. I mean, I'm not sure
Yeah,
really.
that's another great question, because they are going to be updating their specific plan. And so I think that would be just general direction to staff if they continue on their path of including open space in their specific plan, that we would look for those opportunities to combine open space and connect up with, ultimately with the Riverside County Habitat Plan, so.
Okay.
And that's your sense right now, that they're willing to kind of be, you know, it'll meld nicely with each other and not just, you know, we've got Hillside and open space and they just decide to put a building right at their city border.
My general sense is they really want to work with us on that issue and others, between their specific plan, Mesa Verde specific plan, and our freeway corridor specific plan. We've met several times on transportation-related issues and talked about open space-related issues. We haven't seen any concepts relative to the updated specific plan, but from a philosophical perspective, they seem to really be interested in working closely with us.
Okay.
All right, John.
I agree with the mayor with his point of view on this. You addressed my thoughts and concerns, so not much more to add to that.
Okay.
So there's a project right now, a warehouse project, is it there on county line or right off county line to the west, I guess? I don't know if I have that right, but there's a project there. Will that interfere with the whole Calamasa to Yucaipa open space sort of corridor?
No, I'm not sure if that's a project that we have a completed application for yet, but there is one being considered there. That certainly has an impact on our conversations relative to transportation, how that works together on both sides of county line. Not as much on the open space issues. That's more kind of on the south end of our freeway corridor specific plan.
yeah, if I may, it is within what was still zoned as regional commercial, and then it's adjacent to commercial land uses in the city of Calamasa. So in terms of open space connectivity, they're not part of what we would leverage in the update.
Okay, do you have enough direction at this point, Ray, or do you need something else?
Yeah, I think we have enough direction. We'll come back to you with what we heard here tonight, and you'll have another opportunity to throw darts at that. Based on this, we'll also start working on the overall land use plan, continue working on the overall land use plans, and intend on bringing that to you over the next month or two as well. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us to, do you have anything? No. That takes us to announcements. Are there any announcements? Bob, you have anything?
We have Autumn Fest coming up, don't we? Which I'm excited about that, for sure.
All right, Autumn Fest, October 8th and 9th, right?
Oh, that's coming right up.
Yeah. David, do you have anything?
No, I don't think so at this time.
John, you have anything? Nope. All right, so we do have a closed session.
We do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, we've got one item on this evening's closed session. It's a conference with Real Property Negotiator. It's a portion of Assessor's Parcel Number 318-173-39 at 12514 Fifth Street. The city's negotiator is Mr. Casey. Negotiating parties are Roberto and Leticia Gomez. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment, and we do not expect reportable action this evening.
All right, with that, we will adjourn the city council meeting.
Good job, Doug.